Something was off the moment Cory Booker opened his mouth, because he wasn't just frustrated, he sounded like someone who finally reached a breaking point. And when a senator hits that level, it usually means something big is about to drop. But nobody in that room expected what came next. Booker didn't ease into it. He didn't build up to it. He went straight for the one topic every official has danced around, dodged, or flat out shifted stories about for months: the Epstein files. And in a single move, he forced the Department of Justice into a corner they could no longer step out of quietly. Booker started by acknowledging a frustration that had been simmering for months: his state being denied key grants, the DOJ pulling money back, and states left scrambling while others were approved seemingly without logic.
Eight, say aye.
Mr. Grassley? Mr. Grassley?
Where?
I'm sorry, I was trying to be recognized.
Go ahead.
Yes. First of all, I want to express at the top a lot of frustration that the DOJ is scraping money back from some states. I've made this point multiple times, but it is very frustrating to me that my state is being denied these type of grants while other states are. We're seeing a big frustration across New Jersey that very thoughtful grants that could be saving lives and being substantively helpful are being denied. And with that frustration, I want to call up an amendment. I'd like to call up my amendment number ALL 25698. Mr. Chairman, this amendment would allow S 1098 to take effect on the date when the Attorney General makes public all unclassified files, flight logs, correspondence, and evidence related to Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and their associates. The Department of Justice, we know clearly, has lied to the American people one way or another. Attorney General Bondi said that there were truckloads of evidence from the Epstein files and the Epstein list, leading people to believe that there was criminal activity that they had evidence of. I know Bovee, who we're talking about, was part of this. We found out yesterday that the president is mentioned several times in the Epstein files, and he was briefed on it back in May when he said he was not told that. Then in July, suddenly the DOJ and the FBI said there was nothing additional to disclose. So what's the lie? That there are truckloads of evidence and this DOJ is protecting those associates with this horrific crime? That Mr. Bovee, a Third Circuit nominee, is part of that cover-up? Or is the lie that there is nothing there at all? Let's just find out. This is simply asking for disclosure and transparency, and I'd like to offer that amendment.
Mr. Chair, parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Chair, down here.
But that irritation was just the door he needed to open the real conversation he'd been waiting to have. You could almost feel the room shift as he pivoted from funding issues to something far heavier. Because Booker wasn't interested in playing procedural politics today. He'd been holding on to something, and now he was ready to put it all on the table. And then it happened. He called up amendment number 25698, and the room froze. This wasn't a minor change to a bill. This wasn't a technical tweak or a symbolic gesture. Booker introduced an amendment that would force the bill to take effect only when the Attorney General releases every unclassified file, log, correspondence, and piece of evidence connected to Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and their associates. Every file, every log, every scrap of paper that had been hidden, withheld, or conveniently brushed to the side. It was bold. It was unexpected. And it was the kind of move politicians usually avoid because it shines a light exactly where powerful people don't want it. Booker's voice didn't shake. It didn't hedge. He wanted everything made public, and he wanted it before anything else moved forward. That amendment was his line in the sand. And in that single moment, he dragged the DOJ's shifting narrative out into the open for everyone to see. Because here's where the story got messy. Booker wasn't just calling for transparency. He was calling out contradictions. Big ones. He reminded everyone that Attorney General Pam Bondi herself said there were truckloads of Epstein evidence. Not a folder, not a box, truckloads. She even said the Epstein client list was sitting on her desk. That language set the country on fire. People assumed major revelations were coming, that long-rumored connections would finally be confirmed or debunked, that justice would finally be served. But then something strange happened. The DOJ later claimed there was nothing additional to disclose. Overnight, the truckloads of evidence became nothing, gone, dismissed. In a matter of weeks, huge claims were suddenly replaced by a clean, quiet denial that anything remained unseen. And Booker wasn't going to pretend those two stories could sit next to each other without demanding answers. This is where the contradictions piled up. Either Bondi exaggerated beyond belief, something that would raise enormous questions about her motives and honesty, or the DOJ was downplaying, hiding, or refusing to release material that the public had every right to see. Booker didn't accuse anyone of lying. He didn't have to. He simply laid out the facts, one by one, and let the contradictions reveal themselves. But the pressure didn't stop with Bondi's story shifting. Booker pointed to something even more shocking: the revelation that the president had been mentioned several times in the Epstein files. He highlighted that the president was briefed on those mentions back in May, something that contradicted what he'd publicly claimed later. Booker wasn't making accusations. He was pointing out that the timeline didn't make sense. If officials were briefed in May, how could they claim later that they were never told anything? The facts clashed, and every time a public statement clashed with internal details, more people started wondering what was being left out at the same time. Booker raised another name: Boy, a nominee for a major judicial appointment. He hinted that this nominee's involvement with certain decisions might be connected to how the Epstein records were handled. Not accusations, just questions. But questions that carried weight, because Booker made it clear something in this chain of decisions wasn't adding up. And when high-level nominations overlap with withheld evidence, people pay attention. From there, Booker laid out what he called the only two options left on the table. Either Bondi was misleading the public when she claimed to have mountains of evidence, or the DOJ was misleading the public when they later said everything had already been released. Both stories can't be true. Both can't exist in the same reality. And Booker wanted to know which one was the lie. That's when the energy in the room changed again. Because no matter what direction that contradiction points, someone at the highest level either exaggerated, minimized, or concealed something tied to one of the most notorious criminal networks in recent history. Booker's message was simple: the truth needs to be public. All of it. The flight logs, the correspondence, the unclassified evidence, the names, the context, the files that have been teased, discussed, contradicted, reinterpreted, and buried under layers of shifting explanations. He wasn't interested in political games or media soundbites. He wanted transparency above all else, and he wanted it tied directly to the bill's timeline so nobody could dodge the responsibility later. It wasn't just about the Epstein case. It was about trust. Trust in investigations, trust in leaders, trust in federal institutions that claim to work for the people. Booker made the point that every contradiction erodes that trust a little more. Every shift in story leaves people wondering who's protecting whom. And every unexplained gap in what's been released only fuels more speculation among the public. At that point, you could feel the tension tightening across the committee. Everyone knew exactly what Booker was pushing toward. Everyone knew these files held the potential to embarrass powerful people, raise uncomfortable questions, and expose relationships the public has only heard whispered about online. And when Booker finished laying out the contradictions, he simply said the line that silenced the room: let's just find out. No theatrics, no anger, just a straightforward challenge. Release the files, end the contradictions, and let the truth stand on its own. That silence didn't last long. Almost immediately, someone tried to jump in with a parliamentary inquiry. A classic move to interrupt, redirect, or dilute the impact of what had just happened. But the timing made it obvious. Booker's amendment had struck a nerve. He had said the thing everyone knew existed under the surface, but few dared to address openly. And the inquiry didn't make his point disappear. If anything, it made it louder, because when powerful institutions get uncomfortable, people notice. When officials scramble to change the subject, people pay attention. And when an entire committee pauses because of one senator's demand for transparency, it sends a message far louder than anything spoken into the microphone. Booker didn't accuse anyone of crimes. He didn't pass judgment on the names involved. He didn't jump into speculation or conspiracies. He did what few politicians are willing to do. He demanded openness in a case where secrecy has never made sense. He pressed for answers in a system built on silence. He forced contradictions into the light and made people confront the fact that someone, somewhere, wasn't telling the full truth. And whether that truth is hidden in the flight logs, the correspondence, or the unclassified materials no one wants to discuss publicly, Booker's stance was clear. The people deserve to see every page. Not filtered, not redacted beyond recognition, not selectively released to soften the impact. Everything. Maybe those files aren't as explosive as some believe. Maybe they're far worse. But there's only one way to end years of rumor, speculation, and public distrust, and Booker made that point unmistakable. Release it all. And what happened next? The room tried to move on. Officials tried to shift back into procedure. But everyone watching, whether inside the chamber or online, knew exactly what moment would be replayed, dissected, and remembered. It wasn't the funding debate. It wasn't the procedural questions. It was Booker's amendment, his challenge, and the silence that followed. Because silence, in moments like this, is an answer all its own. If you found this breakdown eye-opening, make sure to hit subscribe, tap like, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next deep dive into the hearings and moments they don't want you to notice. Your support helps bring these stories to the forefront. And trust me, there's a lot more coming.